I have something new that I want to do. They're NBA playoff power rankings. You're thinking, hey, Ryan, are you going to rank all the playoff teams, the power rankings? That's going to get kind of stupid. Yes, that would get stupid. That's not what we're doing. We're just going to rank stuff because people love ranking stuff. We're going to rank different storylines, different observations because we're only 4 games in the technically not playoff portion of the NBA season, the play-in season part of it. But let's run through it. Number 1 of the power rankings, celebrations, or at least celebration arguments. Timberwolves went off with their win against the Clippers. Emotional win. 1 point there. I was like, I think the Clippers might pull this off. D'Angelo Russell was terrific late. Anthony Edwards, little reminders for maybe a national audience that hasn't always watched him all the time. Be like, oh, this is why you guys really like him, because he has moments where you just go, I can't believe this dude and what he does after a very disappointing game for Karl Anthony Towns fouling out and all the foul trouble that he had. We'll get to that a little bit later. But there's a divide, and I know where I stand on it because I've said the story before, and I went on Pardon My Take this week and kind of talked about it in more depth. But after I worked for the Trenton Thunder in 2002, and being around baseball players every single day and realizing that they're not as up or down as we are as fans about the outcomes, it's really one of the greatest learning experiences I've ever had throughout my entire career. I think it actually kind of set a foundation for how I saw sports and how I would talk about them for the next 20 years. Incredible experience, that part of it. I've talked about the rest of it. It wasn't a great job. But the point is that originally, I used to be like, why are you celebrating a wild card? Like, this is stupid. Wait until the end. As if everybody was supposed to be like militant and single-minded and focused. You could never enjoy any of it unless you were actually winning everything. And that sucks. That sucks for fans. If you're in that building in Minnesota and it's feeling great and you have this comeback win and Pat Beverly's going crazy, in that moment, why would you tell thousands and thousands of people to not feel that way? And remember, this is a franchise, the Timberwolves, that have won one playoff game since 2005. Not a series. One playoff game. I think it was that Jazz series. They lost 4-1. So one game, and this wasn't even it, but now you're in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens. I'll admit, was there a Pat Beverly element to it where I'm like, all right, dude, you went 2 for 8 with 7 points. But it was emotional for him because it was revenge. He wanted revenge on the Clippers because he felt like the contract offer was disrespectful. They flipped him to Memphis, which then flipped him to Minnesota. And by the way, does that mean Memphis, he's going to be the same way against them because he's going to want payback revenge because he didn't actually play for them. But I also think Pat Beverly, the last time we saw him in the playoffs, he was shoving Chris Paul after Paul cooked him. And he was just mad. He was just mad at another player and pushed him because he was mad about it. And I remember the Clippers being like, yeah, we're probably done with you. So I don't think there was all on the Clippers not evaluating him the right way or being disrespectful. I think they were just good and ready to move on from Pat Beverly. But good for Pat Bev, good for the Timberwolves. I do think that all successful teams need somebody that kind of lives on the edge. I think technicals are generally selfish plays by players, especially if you do it all the time. To me, Beverly's, for the most part, out of control throughout a lot of these games. But I do think you need some of these personalities. Not that everybody's the same, but Golden State needs Draymond's personality. They need his personality because I think the other guys are kind of passive generally. I think Marcus Smart, when he's not taking bad threes and when he's playing point guard, which he has been in this turnaround, he's been terrific and great defense on top of everything else. Even though I think he pushes the line and is at times dirty, and I don't always love the flops. I actually hate anybody that flops. They need his personality. I think Miami, like as much as I don't, it's kind of funny that a lot of these players seem to fall in the same category for me. Lowry is one of my least favorite players to watch, but I think you need somebody that has his kind of just combative attitude the entire time. So if you have a very passive, emotional team, it's not impossible for you to win, but I think that's why a guy like Matt Barnes stays in the league for such a long time. Number 2 in the power rankings, new defenders. I think everybody got a little sample, little puff of Herb Jones last night. Not on Herb. T-shirts in New Orleans. Really enjoyed those. Like to get my hands on one. He is dynamic. He is all over the place. I have him on my all-rookie teams, which I'll get to some of my voting. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It'll be available for people to ridicule at some point. But Jones, this is kind of the cool part about the playing game is that, let's face it, I mean, a lot of people, and I'm not blaming anybody for this, but you're learning about some of these players for the first time because they're playoff, whether it's the play-in or then playoff games, because you're more into it. I mean, there's more eyes on this stuff. So to see a rookie like Herb Jones assigned to top perimeter players throughout and how versatile a defensive player he is, it's a lot of fun. And I'm even going to give Jaden McDaniels some credit here too for the Timberwolves. I know that Paul George's final numbers in that game, I think he's 34, 7, and 7. So you're saying, wait a minute, Paul George had 34 points. If you go back and watch, not that anybody's going to do this, if you watch Paul George try to dribble past McDaniels, he had a really hard time with it. I mean, Jaden stood him up a bunch of different times. Jaden needs to improve his three-point shooting. It was 36% last year, 31% this year, but his free throws went from 60% to 80%. So I look at like Jaden McDaniels as that just perfect 3-and-D, and also a very good example of a young player changing who he is. I was talking with somebody the other day where I said, Nick Claxton was a really weird evaluation because he was a wing guy or wanted to run the offense and play small forward and dribble the ball up for Georgia. I'm not saying bring it up all the time, but you get the point. And now he's kind of like in that Clint Capella role, although I don't think he provides as much resistance at the rim, but you get it, like dunks and rolls and cuts, stay active, make it tough to rebound. And you're like, all right, this is cool. Like, this is not who he was. If you watch McDaniels at Washington, I mean, he was initiating more of their offense. He's never going to be asked to do that with Minnesota. Instead of forcing the issue, he's found a role. And I thought there were some really nice defensive possessions where you saw Paul George just really frustrating trying to get past him. Okay, number 3 in my power rankings, vote Anks. It'll go down after this. Probably won't be ranked next week. I have all my votes in. We put it in. It was, like I said, a lot of fun to be able to get to do it and talk with Simmons about it on Sunday's pod. We went through basically everything. It was really, really difficult. I can't imagine if Durant played a full season, if you throw him into the mix as the 4th guy deserving of MVP. I'm not going to go over all the Embiid Jokic shit. We've done it forever now. I had 2 votes that I still don't feel great about, and it came down to Butler or Siakam for the final forward spot on my 3rd team ballot. I went with Butler. There are great arguments for both. And it's one of those where you put it in and you go, I don't feel great about this. But that's the whole point. There's like 50 things that we're filling out. You're not going to, I don't care who you are, or at least you shouldn't be done with it. Go, yep, nailed it. Nothing debatable here. And some of the defensive player of the year stuff was really tough because I think there were a lot of worthy guys. And there's also stats, there's reputation. There's a lot of ways you can go with defensive player voting where you can make mistakes. And I'm just going to trust what I've seen over the course of the season. Not to say I eliminated all these other things. And the coach of the year, forget it. Coach of the year is a whole nother level. There's like 8 guys that I could have put in there and felt good about it, but you had to only vote for 3. Number 4 on my power rankings, Miles Bridges. Oh, does Russillo have him down because threw his mouthpiece at a guy who was talking shit to him as he went out of the tunnel and he hit a 16-year-old girl in the head with the mouthpiece? No, he's up in my power rankings. You want to know why? I love Miles Bridges. I love how he immediately was accountable for it last night, was like, hey, look, that's on me, unacceptable. We know intent. Intent doesn't get enough credit anymore. Like, what was the intent of what the person said? What was the intent of the act? His intent wasn't great. Probably shouldn't be throwing a mouthpiece at somebody and it ended up hitting somebody else. She didn't seem like it was going to ruin her night. And he immediately was like, hey, who is she? I need to reach out. I need to apologize. He'll get fined. I don't know if he'll get suspended or not. But the reason I bring up Miles Bridges and the reason I've always liked him so much is that he was asked, it might have been by a local reporter. He didn't make all rookie first or second team his rookie year. And it was presented as if, hey, how do you feel about getting snubbed? Not making first or second team all rookie. And Bridges goes, quote, I didn't get snubbed. I played like ass all year. As soon as he said that, I go, this is a guy I would want on my basketball team. So because he said that, it makes me think I get a sense of who he is. He did something he didn't love last night in their loss to Atlanta. To me, Miles Bridges is actually going up in our power rankings, although they're eliminated. So we're not 100% sure of where this is going. Staying with the Hornets for a bit here. I went on local Charlotte television last night. Yes, I did. And like any local fan base, when the team doesn't do well, everybody wants the coach fired. I don't know that everybody, I'm not super locked into the Hornets blogosphere, but it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, wait, you guys think Borrego should be fired throughout all this? I went through it. They haven't had a real center in 4 seasons. Plumlee's a backup. Zeller's a backup. Their last good center was Dwight Howard. They didn't have Gordon Hayward. He's their highest paid player. That's what happens when you go supermax. And it isn't really supermax for Gordon Hayward, but it felt like it. And you're like, wait, what are you going to pay this guy to bring him in? And the reason you do that is because you're the Hornets and you're not really going to get into the other guys, the top tier guys, maybe only second tier guys, maybe not even the second tier guys, right? So I get why they've done what they've done, but I don't understand why they haven't been able to get a serviceable center, something that's a bit more of an upgrade. And you can say, well, hey, they had Biyombo and now look at him with Phoenix. Yeah, that's right, because he's playing with Chris Paul. All right, there's this pretty common theme here, what happens with bigs when they get to play with Chris Paul. So I don't understand that one. And I also realize how unpopular the Nash hire for the Nets was in certain circles of the NBA discussion space. If you're going to tell me his rotations aren't good, you need to tell me exactly what it is about his rotations that you don't like. You got to tell me exactly what it is, because it becomes this vague, repeated thing where it's like, I don't know, man, in-game adjustments. Okay, which adjustments that he's made did you not like? Be specific, because no one ever seems to be. I'm sure there's some out there that don't like. If you watch your team 82 games, you'll see some stuff you don't like. I don't care who's coaching. It'd be Pat Riley back there. But if you're telling me Nash is a good coach because of in-game stuff while giving him zero credit for having the disposition to get the Nets through this bullshit of the last 2 years, which has been a lot of it, you got to give him credit for that as well. Number 6, almost finished here. Number 6, the under 25 rankings up on ESPN.com. 3 guys put this together, 3 guys that I respect: Bobby Marks, Mike Schmitz, Kevin Pelton. This ranking is crazy, because I went into it, I'm like, okay, and I'll admit, like you, I go, all right, what am I not going to like? Top 5, Luka, Tatum, John Morant. 4, Trae Young. 5, LaMelo. LaMelo feels a little high for me on that one. But for the most part, you're like, okay, yep, that makes sense. You keep going. Cade Cunningham was 6. Zion still 7. I would put Zion behind a few guys now at this point. Bam's 8. Darius is 9. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 10. Anthony Edwards 11. I guess I'm reading the whole thing. Ingram 12. Scotty Barnes 13. Tyrese 14. Mobley 15. That feels low. Miles Bridges 16. Desmond Bain 17, Jaren Allen 18, DeAndre Ayton 19. Ayton was 11th on one ballot and not on the other one, which doesn't make any sense to not be on it. I'd be more likely to put him at 11. Tyler Hero 20, Jalen Green 21, De'Aaron Fox 22, John Collins 23, Tyrese Maxey 24, Jaren Jackson 25, which seems ridiculously low. I don't think there's any version of this where I would have Jaren Jackson behind Tyler Hero, but that's the point, is that it's really hard to do when you're going ahead and voting and ranking all of this stuff. So top 25, under 25 rankings, we have 6th in my rankings. The final one. Oh, by the way, I was looking at the preseason rankings because I got in this wormhole of it. They had Bradley Beal, again, this is ESPN.com. They had Bradley Beal 11th best player in the NBA going into this season. So these things can get a little weird every now and then. Final thing, Lakers topics. We have them dropped to 7th in our power rankings. They're probably not going away this offseason, folks. Just a little bit of a warning. The Mark Jackson thing to the Lakers, as much as I want to have it happen, just for obvious reasons, I would warn everyone that I wonder if, because Mark Jackson is the clutch client in this, that LeBron James is doing what he thinks is like the impressionable power move, where he says that he wants Mark Jackson, so that somehow another owner would be like, wow, if LeBron wants him, then we should hire him, when in fact he doesn't want him to be his head coach. Just a theory, wouldn't shock me. Those are your power rankings.